Ancient Egypt's technological world did not emerge suddenly or randomly. It expanded through thousands of years of careful observation, experimentation, and adaptation to one of the most demanding environments on Earth. Long before the pyramids rose, before the pharaohs wore crowns, and before hieroglyphs were carved into stone walls, the earliest Egyptians were already building a foundation for scientific thought, one rooted in survival, environmental mastery, and a deep quest to understand the natural forces around them. This first part explores how Egyptian technology began, how it developed during the pre-dynastic period, and the mindset that made Egypt one of the most technologically advanced civilizations of the ancient world. Egypt's geography defined its earliest innovations. The Nile River, flowing predictably from south to north, created a narrow green band of life in the middle of harsh desert. Early communities learned that the river's annual flood was not merely a natural event, but a dependable system that could be studied, measured, and used. This relationship with the Nile produced some of humanity's earliest examples of applied science. The annual inundation encouraged experimentation with irrigation, soil management, canal construction, and water-based engineering. Over time, this close, almost scientific relationship with nature pushed the Egyptian mind toward a technologically driven worldview, to measure, to observe, to predict, and to build solutions that exceeded the limitations of their environment. By 6000 to 4000 BC, early settlements along the Nile, particularly in Upper Egypt, were already showing signs of organized labor, early architecture, and sophisticated tool-making. Flint knives, pallets, stone vessels, and cosmetic tools demonstrate not only artistic skill, but also precision engineering. These objects were balanced, polished, symmetrical, and designed for long-term use. Their production required standardized techniques, controlled heat treatment, and batching of raw materials, behaviors strikingly similar to early manufacturing. From this era onward, Egypt embraced a culture of innovation where functionality and symbolism combined to create tools that were both useful and culturally meaningful. One of the earliest technological revolutions in Egypt was the refinement of stoneworking techniques. The mastery of flint knapping reached such extraordinary precision that some blades from the Naqada period rival the sharpness of modern surgical scalpels. These flint blades were often created using pressure flaking, a technique requiring technical understanding of fracture mechanics and extraordinary hand control. Early Egyptians understood how to control force, angle, and direction to achieve consistent cuts. This mastery later influenced how they carved limestone, sandstone, and eventually granite, materials essential to monumental architecture. Agricultural innovations emerged simultaneously. Early Egyptians developed sickles with inset flint blades, grinding stones for flour, storage pits for grain, and early granaries that indicated planned long-term food management. They experimented with soil types, crop rotation, and selective breeding of plants. Domesticated wheat and barley became staples, and flax cultivation expanded textile production, a major technological specialization of early Egypt. Linen would later become one of Egypt's most widespread and technologically impactful materials, used in clothing, sails, mummy wrappings, and even writing surfaces. The domestication of animals further expanded technological potential. Cattle not only provided food, but served as power sources for plowing and transport. Early ceramic models and rock carvings show the use of early yokes, carts, and carrying systems. This period also saw the domestication of donkeys, which revolutionized trade and logistics. Donkeys allowed the early Egyptians to transport raw materials across deserts, including gold, copper, turquoise, natron, and precious stones, resources that powered later technological breakthroughs. Trade networks themselves were a major technological phenomenon. By 4000 BCE, Egypt exchanged goods with Nubia, the Levant, Mesopotamia, and possibly even early Mediterranean islands. Boats crafted from papyrus bundles were already capable of long-distance travel along the Nile. Some of the first boat designs in human history appear in pre-dynastic Egyptian art: curved hulls, steering oars, multiple crew positions, and sometimes even cabins or deck structures. These designs reflect early experimentation with hydrodynamics and the physics of buoyancy. The earliest Egyptians also developed a surprisingly advanced understanding of chemistry. They produced pigments from minerals such as malachite, red ochre, and galena. They experimented with heat, grinding, and mixing techniques that later contributed to the development of faience, a glass-like material produced from quartz and alkalis. Faience production required a sophisticated understanding of firing temperatures, flux behavior, and mineral reactions. This early chemical innovation represents a major technological milestone, one that would influence glassmaking millennia later. Social organization was another critical technological development. The emergence of permanent settlements required systems of labor distribution, leadership, and record-keeping. Even before writing existed, the Egyptians used symbolic marks, tags, and seal impressions to track goods and ownership. These proto-administrative systems show that technology in Egypt was not only about tools, but also about structures, institutions, and methods of managing people and resources efficiently. By 3500 BCE, the pace of innovation accelerated. Copper metallurgy appeared in Egypt, likely influenced by trade with the Levant and Sinai. Early metalworkers learned smelting, casting, annealing, and alloy experimentation. They produced chisels, blades, adzes, needles, and early weapons. Copper tools transformed construction methods by making woodwork and stonework faster, more precise, and more scalable. This shift marked the beginning of Egypt's ability to undertake large architectural projects. At the same time, early surveying tools emerged. Straight edges, plumb bobs, cubic rods, and early forms of leveling instruments appeared as the Egyptians developed increasingly complex building projects. The ability to measure straight lines, right angles, and consistent distances was essential for temple layouts, field boundaries, and later the perfect geometry of pyramids. Religious belief also played a role in technological development. Egyptians viewed the world as a place governed by order, a cosmic principle that encouraged stability, harmony, and balance. This worldview naturally extended into their technologies, where precision, symmetry, and consistency were treated as reflections of universal truth. As a result, Egyptian craftsmen and engineers approached their work not merely as labor, but as a contribution to cosmic order. This philosophical commitment to precision explains why Egyptian technology was so advanced and maintained such a high standard of quality for thousands of years. The development of writing, one of humanity's greatest technological inventions, emerged around 33003-200 BCE. Hieroglyphic script allowed Egyptians to record inventories, religious texts, medical knowledge, astronomical observations, and administrative data. Writing transformed technology by giving Egyptians the ability to store knowledge across generations. No longer dependent solely on oral tradition, engineers, physicians, priests, and artisans could refine and improve methods over centuries. This stability of knowledge allowed Egyptian science and technology to evolve in a continuous and cumulative way unmatched by most other ancient civilizations. With the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BCE, technology surged forward. The centralized state could mobilize massive labor forces, coordinate resource flows, and develop standardized systems across the entire Nile Valley. The creation of the world's first large-scale bureaucracy itself represents a technological achievement, an administrative machine capable of planning, calculating, allocating, and supervising vast national projects. This new political system accelerated the development of architecture, agriculture, transportation, and crafts. As Egypt entered the early dynastic period, the groundwork for monumental engineering had already been laid. Surveyors, masons, carpenters, metalworkers, and labor supervisors had developed tools, methods, and organizational structures needed to build large temples, tombs, and eventually the pyramids. A technological mindset that emerged during the pre-dynastic era: precision, order, experimentation, and cumulative knowledge would fuel Egypt's greatest achievements throughout the Old Kingdom and beyond. Thus, the earliest chapter of Egyptian technology is not simply a story of tools and inventions, but a story of human adaptation, cognitive evolution, and systematic problem-solving. The capacity to study natural patterns, measure environmental cycles, and organize human labor allowed Egypt to rise from scattered river settlements to a unified kingdom capable of building timeless monuments. This mindset, rooted in observation, precision, and continuity, was the true technology that made Egypt great, and it would serve as the foundation for the monumental innovations explored in later parts. The rise of the Pyramid Age marks one of the greatest technological transformations in human history. Between 2700 and 2200 BCE, Egypt evolved from a society experimenting with small-scale stone buildings to a civilization capable of constructing the Great Pyramid of Giza, the tallest human-made structure on Earth, for nearly 4,000 years. This achievement was not an accident, nor was it the result of mythical powers. It was a direct expression of Egypt's uniquely advanced engineering culture, its mastery of logistics, and its ability to mobilize large-scale labor forces with precision rarely seen in the ancient world. To understand the technological sophistication behind the pyramids, one must first recognize the massive leap from early mastabas, flat-roofed, rectangular tombs, to multi-tiered step pyramids, and eventually smooth-sided true pyramids. This evolution reflects centuries of experimentation, structural analysis, and architectural refinement. The first major breakthrough came under Pharaoh Djoser, c. 2667-2648 BCE, whose visionary architect Imhotep designed the step pyramid at Saqqara. Imhotep's design replaced mud brick with limestone, ushering in the world's first monumental stone construction on a truly massive scale. This transition required new tools, new methods of quarrying, new logistics for transporting stone blocks, and entirely new systems of workforce organization. The step pyramid itself was not built as a single structure, but developed through a series of expansions, each phase revealing Egypt's growing confidence in stone architecture. Initially planned as a simple mastaba, the structure was enlarged multiple times, eventually reaching 6 tiers. This demonstrated the Egyptians' ability not only to scale construction, but also to analyze load distribution, foundation stability, and structural integrity. The builders understood, through empirical knowledge, that wider bases and step tiers were essential to prevent collapse. Their success laid the foundation for future pyramid designs. Quarrying limestone for large-scale structures represented a major technological challenge. Egyptians developed copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, wooden wedges, and levers to detach blocks from bedrock. Workers carved channels around the perimeter of each block, hammered the dolerite stones repeatedly to loosen the material, and inserted water-soaked wooden wedges to create pressure and crack the stone naturally. This combination of mechanical force and hydraulic expansion shows remarkable ingenuity. Many quarries still preserve visible tool marks today, offering insight into the precision and planning involved. Transportation technology evolved rapidly during this era. Stone blocks weighing several tons had to be moved from quarries to construction sites, sometimes across miles of desert. Egyptians employed sledges rather than wheeled vehicles, a choice that at first seems counterintuitive. However, experiments and wall reliefs indicate that sledges, when dragged over sand lubricated with water, could significantly reduce friction. A famous depiction from the tomb of AncientEgypt shows workers pouring water in front of a statue being transported. Modern physics experiments confirm that this technique reduces friction by up to 50%. The Egyptians were not guessing. They were applying empirical science. Organization of labor was another essential technological component. Contrary to the popular myth of slave labor, pyramid workers were skilled, well-fed, and part of rotating workforce teams. Villages built near the pyramid sites housed teams of bakers, brewers, masons, metalworkers, carpenters, and administrators. Archaeological evidence shows that these workers ate high-calorie diets including beef, fish, and bread fuel for the physically demanding construction environment. Records indicate that workers were divided into hierarchical teams with names, responsibilities, and rotational schedules. This level of workforce management resembles an early form of industrial labor organization. Once at the construction site, each stone block had to be precisely shaped. Copper tools required frequent sharpening, and chisels needed constant replacement. Egyptians developed advanced metallurgical techniques to create harder copper alloys through controlled annealing, heating, and cooling metal to improve durability. Dolerite hammerstones were used to shape granite, but limestone was carved primarily with copper tools. The ability to achieve straight edges, right angles, and perfectly smooth surfaces on such a large scale demonstrates an extraordinary mastery of precision engineering. Perhaps the most iconic achievement of Old Kingdom engineering was the construction of the Great Pyramid under Pharaoh Khufu around 2580 BCE. The sheer scale of this monument, originally 146.6 meters tall, required a level of planning and execution unmatched in ancient history. The precision of the pyramid's orientation remains one of its most astonishing features. The sides of the Great Pyramid are aligned to true north with an error of roughly 3 arc minutes, an accuracy impossible without advanced astronomical observation. Scholars believe Egyptians used the circumpolar stars to establish true north, observing the rotation of stars around the celestial pole and marking the midpoint of their movement. This method, known as the pole star transit, produced astonishing accuracy. Surveying tools such as the Merkhet, an early astronomical sighting tool, the Bay, a notched measuring rod, and the Groma-like A-frame level were essential to achieving architectural precision. Egyptians understood the need for standardized measurement systems. The royal cubit was subdivided into 7 palms, each palm into 4 fingers. Cubic rods discovered in tombs show that measurement consistency was strictly enforced, a key factor in achieving uniform block sizes and structural stability. Construction methods for raising stones have been debated for centuries, but archaeological evidence suggests ramps were used extensively. These ramps could have taken several forms: straight ramps, zigzag ramps, spiral ramps, or a combination of systems built alongside the pyramid's faces. Each method required careful geometric planning. A straight ramp, for example, would become too heavy and long as the pyramid grew taller, suggesting the use of modular ramps that were dismantled and reassembled as the structure rose. Recent discoveries at Hatnub, major quarry, show how ramps with central staircases and rope-pulling systems allowed workers to drag massive alabaster blocks at steep inclines. This proves Egyptians did indeed use advanced mechanical principles involving pulleys, leverage, and counterweight techniques. Inside the Great Pyramid, the internal structure reflects a deep understanding of structural engineering. The king's chamber, made of granite blocks weighing up to 70 tons, required precise placement at great heights, and achievement requiring ramps, rollers, sledges, and synchronized lifting techniques. Above this chamber, 5 relieving chambers distribute weight through angled granite beams, demonstrating Egyptians' understanding of stress, compression, and load distribution. Although not expressed in mathematical formulas, this knowledge was the result of centuries of cumulative experimentation and architectural learning. Air shafts, corridors, and chambers inside the pyramids exhibit further technological sophistication. The shafts are aligned to specific stars, revealing the integration of cosmology, religion, and engineering. The Queen's Chamber passages were sealed with concealed block and groove systems, implying early forms of mechanical locking. The precision of these interior features shows remarkable skill in planning and execution. Beyond pyramids, Old Kingdom engineers developed temples, causeways, valley temples, and gigantic administrative complexes surrounding these structures. The mortuary complexes of Kafr and Menkaure reveal advanced stone-cutting techniques, including the use of massive granite casings, polished basalt floors, and limestone cladding. The Valley Temple of Kafr, constructed with enormous tura, limestone blocks lined with granite, illustrates the Egyptians' ability to move and position multi-ton stones with almost machine-like precision. The use of granite in particular represents a technological milestone. Granite quarries at Aswan contain partially carved obelisks and columns that show how masons used dolerite pounders to shape the rock. The unfinished obelisk, weighing in estimated 1,200 tons, reveals the Egyptians' ambition and confidence in handling massive monoliths. The controlled pounding technique used to hollow out trenches around the obelisk demonstrates their understanding of fracture patterns and material behavior. Transporting such stones required immense logistical organization, including barges reinforced to carry heavy loads along the Nile. This combination of quarrying, shaping, transporting, and erecting granite structures represents a nearly unmatched level of technological integration. The precision of Egyptian architecture extended to interior design. Columns, capitals, lintels, and door frames were carved with mathematical symmetry. Temple alignments often matched solstices, equinoxes, and star risings, proving the integration of astronomy and architectural planning. The solar temple of Abu Ghorab, for instance, aligned precisely with the sun's path, and its alabaster altar was designed for specific ritual functions. These structures were more than buildings, they were scientific instruments.
Old Kingdom Egypt also advanced technologies in woodwork, copper metallurgy, rope making, and boat construction. Boat pits around the Great Pyramid contained full-sized wooden ships, built with advanced joinery techniques such as Mortise tenon joints, lashings, and dowels. The Khufu ship, discovered sealed in a pit, represents one of the most sophisticated wooden boats of the ancient world. Its construction demonstrates an understanding of hydrodynamics, buoyancy, and long-distance navigation. The ability to build such ships further supports Egypt's role as a technological powerhouse. During this era, even administrative technologies grew more advanced during the Old Kingdom. Large-scale building projects required detailed record-keeping. Ostraka, papyri, and quarry marks show that Egyptians used early accounting systems to track workers, materials, and supplies. Titles such as Chief of the Stone Draggers, Overseer of the Quarry, and Controller of the Scribes indicate a complex administrative hierarchy. This organization itself functioned like an early machine coordinating labor, planning logistics, ensuring quality control, and maintaining consistent production across massive distances. By the end of the Old Kingdom, Egypt had achieved a technological golden age. The knowledge gained from pyramid construction would influence future generations, enabling Egyptians to build temples, obelisks, statues, and cities with unmatched precision. More importantly, the Pyramid Age established a culture of engineering excellence, where experimentation, measurement, and cumulative learning became the norm. The pyramids were not just tombs, they were the ultimate expression of Egypt's scientific worldview. They demonstrated mastery of mathematics, astronomy, geology, physics, logistics, and labor management. They embodied the Egyptian belief that through order humans could shape the world and achieve immortality. Every stone placed in the pyramids was a step forward in technological history. Ancient Egyptian medicine stands as one of the most sophisticated and scientifically grounded healthcare systems of the ancient world. While much of the cultural imagination surrounding Egypt focuses on pyramids, mummies, and pharaohs, the Egyptians' medical knowledge was equally extraordinary, practical, evidence-based, and centuries ahead of its time. Unlike many early societies that relied mostly on supernatural explanations for illness, Egyptian physicians developed observational, empirical, and sometimes experimentally validated medical practices. Their surviving medical papyri reveal detailed anatomical observations, structured diagnostic methods, complex pharmacology, systematic treatments, and even early forms of surgery. To understand the origins of Egyptian medicine, one must first consider its environment. Living in a hot climate full of infectious risks, venomous animals, and physically demanding labor, Egyptians faced injuries, trauma, parasites, digestive issues, and environmental hazards on a daily basis. This constant exposure to threats forced them to develop practical medical solutions. Over centuries, they refined a dual medical system, one rooted in spiritual protection and another grounded in clinical experience. The spiritual element involved incantations, protective amulets, and invocations of healing gods like Sekhmet, Thoth, and Isis. But alongside these beliefs, physicians practiced a surprisingly rational medicine based on anatomy, observation, and cause and effect reasoning. One of the most remarkable aspects of Egyptian medicine is the existence of specialized doctors. Titles like Chief of Physicians, Physician of the Palace, Eye Doctor, Dentist, Stomach Physician, and Keeper of the Bowels appear in inscriptions. This specialization suggests a highly advanced medical profession. Egyptian scribes, who recorded medical knowledge on papyri, formed the backbone of this system. These papyri, especially the Ebers, Edwin Smith, Cahoon, Carlsberg, and Hearst papyri, are some of the oldest medical documents in human history. They provide instructions for diagnosing symptoms, identifying patterns, predicting outcomes, and applying treatments ranging from ointments to surgeries. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, dating to around 1600 BCE, but likely copying much older knowledge, is perhaps the most astonishing example of early scientific medicine. Unlike magical texts, it presents injuries systematically, starting with head wounds and progressing down the body, describing symptoms, treatments, and prognoses. It reads like a modern medical manual. The papyrus shows an understanding of brain function, something rare in the ancient world. It even recognizes that brain injuries can cause paralysis or loss of bodily control. This level of neurological awareness is exceptional for the time. The text describes spinal injuries, broken bones, and dislocated joints with precise terminology. Treatments include bandaging, splinting, immobilization, and monitoring of symptoms. The author distinguishes between cases that can be treated, cases that can be managed, and cases that are hopeless, proving that Egyptian physicians used triage long before the concept existed. Another major medical document, the Ebers Papyrus, is one of the longest ancient medical texts ever discovered, running over 110 pages. It contains more than 700 remedies, pharmacological recipes, and diagnostic methods. It includes treatments for skin diseases, digestive disorders, headaches, respiratory issues, pregnancy complications, depression-like symptoms, and parasitic infections. Many ingredients appear repeatedly: honey, garlic, onions, myrrh, juniper, castor oil, acacia, coriander, cumin, and aloe, demonstrating a pharmacological tradition based on repeated clinical observation. Honey, for example, was frequently used as an antibacterial agent. Modern science confirms its antimicrobial properties, validating Egyptian medical intuition. Moldy bread was applied to wounds, a practice that accidentally harnessed antibiotic-producing fungi centuries before the discovery of penicillin. Many plant-based remedies contain tannins, resins, and bioactive compounds with antiseptic or anti-inflammatory properties. Egyptian pharmacology was not random. It was developed through generations of empirical testing. Dentistry was another, specialized field where Egyptians excelled, largely because tooth decay was widespread due to stone particles in bread flour. Millstones introduced grit into daily diets, causing severe tooth abrasion. Egyptian dental specialists treated infections, abscesses, and loose teeth. While they lacked advanced prosthetics, they developed early forms of splints and even attempts at tooth stabilization. Some mummies show evidence of dental procedures, including drilled teeth and packed cavities, demonstrating attempts at surgical intervention. Eye diseases were common in Egypt's harsh climate, and ophthalmologists, called physicians of the eyes, formed a respected medical class. Treatments included collyrium ointments made from malahite, galena, honey, and plant extracts. The famous Egyptian eyeliner kohl had medical as well as cosmetic uses. Modern research indicates that its lead-based compounds stimulated nitric oxide production in the skin, which helped prevent bacterial infections. Thus, the iconic Egyptian eye makeup was partly a technological defense against disease. Women's health and gynecology were surprisingly advanced. The Kahun gynecological papyrus provides treatments for fertility issues, pregnancy detection, uterine prolapse, and menstruation-related problems. Egyptians developed early pregnancy tests using barley and wheat seeds. If seeds sprouted when exposed to a woman's urine, pregnancy was likely. Modern experiments show this method has a surprisingly high accuracy rate. Midwives possessed specialized knowledge of childbirth techniques, breech deliveries, and postpartum care. They used birthing stools, massage, and herbal remedies to ease labor. Egyptians even developed contraceptives, some involving honey and acacia gum, which, as modern science reveals, ferment into spermicidal compounds. Surgical procedures in ancient Egypt were performed with tools such as copper scalpel blades, obsidian knives, probes, cautery irons, bone saws, and forceps. Surgeons set broken bones using splints made from wood, linen, and plaster-like mixtures. The Edwin Smith Papyrus describes reduction of dislocated joints by traction, bandaging techniques, and management of swelling. Surgery was typically reserved for surface wounds, trauma, and abscesses. Abdominal surgeries were rare due to risks and religious beliefs surrounding the body. Even so, Egyptian surgeons practiced early forms of antiseptic care using honey, resin, and alcohol-like substances to prevent infection. The practice of mummification, although primarily religious, significantly advanced anatomical knowledge. Embalmers regularly handled organs, blood vessels, muscles, and bones. They understood the positions and textures of internal organs, the difference between healthy and diseased tissue, and the pathways of major vessels. However, because mummification was performed by a distinct priestly class, much anatomical knowledge did not transfer directly into medical literature. Still, the familiarity with internal anatomy undoubtedly influenced medical understanding indirectly. Egyptian physicians recognized patterns of disease transmission. They understood that unclean water caused gastrointestinal problems, and they encouraged the boiling or filtering of water. They recognized that flies transmitted certain eye infections, prompting the development of protective ointments. Occupational hazards were also documented. Workers in mines, quarries, and construction sites faced injuries, inhalation issues, and heat-related illnesses. Physicians developed treatments specifically for these conditions, reflecting early occupational medicine. The concept of prognosis, predicting the likely outcome of an illness, was well established. Medical papyri frequently conclude sections with statements categorizing cases: a condition I can treat, a condition I will contend with, or a condition for which nothing can be done. This structured approach resembles modern clinical assessment. Public health measures existed as well. Egyptians promoted personal hygiene, frequent bathing, shaving body hair to reduce lice, using perfumes and oils to prevent skin cracking, and maintaining cleanliness in living environments. These practices reduced infection risk. Temples often functioned as proto-hospitals, offering both spiritual and physical care. Priests trained in healing rituals worked alongside practical physicians, creating a hybrid medical system that addressed both emotional and physical needs. Medical education took place in houses of life, institutions attached to temples where scribes and physicians studied anatomy, pharmacology, mathematics, and religious texts. These centers preserved and copied medical papyri, ensuring continuity of knowledge across centuries. The systematic structure of these institutions demonstrates that Egyptian healthcare was supported by an organized academic tradition, something rare in the ancient world. Mental health, too, received attention. Egyptians identified symptoms resembling anxiety, depression, and psychosomatic illness. Treatments included soothing rituals, aromatic oils, calming music, herbal sedatives, and therapy through dreams. Temples like the Serapeum and sanctuaries dedicated to Imhotep served as healing centers for psychological distress. These institutions combined comfort, rest, and ritual, an early form of holistic therapy. The integration of magic with medicine did not undermine its scientific aspects. Instead, it gave treatments psychological reinforcement, providing comfort to patients. Physicians often combined herbal remedies with spoken incantations, understanding implicitly that belief influences recovery. This early recognition of the mind-body connection represents a sophisticated understanding of human psychology. Egyptian pharmacology remains one of the most impressive aspects of their medical system. Ingredients such as opium poppy, cannabis, mandrake, henbane, myrrh, aloe, fenugreek, rosemary, thyme, and cinnamon appear frequently. Some served as painkillers, others as anti-inflammatories, antispasmodics, or digestive aids. Animal fats, milk, eggs, and liver extracts were used for topical treatments. Minerals like natron, malachite, and galena served antiseptic or anti-irritant roles. The blending of plant, mineral, and animal substances created a remarkably broad pharmacopoeia. Egyptians recognized the importance of dosage, preparation methods, and timing. Remedies specify exact measurements, frequencies, and durations. Some treatments required heating or fermenting ingredients, demonstrating an understanding of chemical transformation. Others called for grinding minerals into fine powders, filtering liquids, or storing mixtures in sealed jars. Pharmacology was treated with the same precision as architecture and mathematics. When the Greek world encountered Egyptian medicine, especially after the time of Alexander the Great, they were astonished. Greek physicians like Herophilus and Galen studied Egyptian texts and acknowledged their advancements. Even Hippocrates, often hailed as the father of medicine, was influenced indirectly by Egyptian practices transmitted through earlier civilizations. The enduring influence of Egyptian medicine continued long after its civilization declined. Many remedies recorded in medieval Arab texts, European herbals, and traditional African medicine can be traced back to ancient Egyptian formulas. The combination of empirical knowledge, structured documentation, and long-term observation made Egyptian healthcare one of the most advanced of antiquity. Ancient Egypt's technological success was not only the result of skilled craftsmanship and practical engineering. At its core stood a sophisticated scientific worldview. Shaped by mathematics, astronomy, and precise measurement, the Egyptians developed some of the earliest numerical systems, calendar structures, and astronomical observation methods in human history. Their ability to measure time, track stellar movements, calculate spatial geometry, and standardize units allowed them to plan agriculture, orient temples, build pyramids, and govern an entire civilization stretching over 3,000 years. In many ways, Egypt's scientific systems formed the intellectual backbone of all its technological achievements. Mathematics in ancient Egypt began as a practical tool for solving everyday problems, such as calculating land boundaries, measuring grain rations, constructing buildings, and organizing labor. But over time, this practicality evolved into a sophisticated, mathematical culture capable of solving complex geometric, algebraic, and fractional problems. Egyptian mathematics used a base 10 decimal system, likely inspired by counting on fingers. Numbers were represented through hieroglyphic symbols, single vertical strokes for ones, hill bones for tens, coiled ropes for hundreds, lotus flowers for thousands, pointing fingers for tens of thousands, tadpoles for hundreds of thousands, and powerful gods for millions. Although the writing system did not include positional notation like modern decimal numbers, Egyptians performed surprisingly complex calculations with their additive numerals, fractions. An area where many early civilizations struggled were handled with a unique system based primarily on unit fractions with a numerator of 1. Instead of writing to fifths, Egyptians expressed it as 1/3 plus 1/15. Mathematical papyri such as the Rind Alms papyrus show extensive tables converting fractions into unit combinations. The Egyptians developed systematic methods to break down fractions using doubling tables, a technique that allowed scribes to perform multiplication and division through sequences of doubled numbers. For example, multiplying a number by 13 involved doubling it successively, 1x, 2x for x, 8x, and then adding the combinations that sum to 13. This binary-like structure demonstrates an early form of algorithmic thinking. The Rind Papyrus, one of the oldest mathematical documents in existence, c. 1650 BCE, contains problems involving arithmetic, geometry, algebraic reasoning, and practical engineering. It includes calculations of areas, volumes, proportions, and even geometric progressions. One famous problem calculates the area of a circle using a formula approximating the value of pi. Egyptian pi was around 3.1605, remarkably close to the actual value of 3.14159. This approximation achieved through empirical measurement shows that Egyptian mathematicians were regularly engaged in measuring curved surfaces and volumes for construction and land surveying. Geometry was essential for reconstruction after the Nile's annual floods, which erased field boundaries each year. Surveyors known as rope stretchers used knotted ropes to measure straight lines, right angles, and triangular plots. A common technique involved ropes knotted into a 3-for-5 triangle, which naturally forms a right angle. This method allowed field boundaries to be re-established efficiently and accurately. The role of rope stretchers was so important that they appear frequently in tomb paintings and reliefs. Their work influenced not only land measurement, but also temple and pyramid layout. Architectural geometry relied heavily on the sect system, a way of expressing the slope of a pyramid's face as horizontal run per vertical rise. Instead of modern angles or gradients, Egyptians used ratios like 5 palms of run per 1 cubit of rise. This system allowed precise, repeatable construction of angled surfaces. The Great Pyramid's slope corresponds to a sect of 5.5 palms, demonstrating the mathematical sophistication behind its design. The consistency of pyramid angles across generations reveals that builders understood geometric principles deeply and applied them rigorously. Astronomy formed the foundation of Egyptian timekeeping. The sky was not merely a backdrop for myth, but a dynamic, measurable system that determined agricultural cycles, religious festivals, and architectural orientation. Egyptians observed the daily motion of the sun, the monthly cycle of the moon, and the yearly heliacal risings of stars. One star in particular, Sirius, known to the Egyptians as Sopdet, held immense importance. Its annual appearance in the dawn sky coincided almost perfectly with the Nile's inundation, making it a natural anchor for the Egyptian civil calendar. This correlation resulted in the earliest known fixed calendar in human history. The Egyptian civil calendar consisted of 365 days divided into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 extra epagomenal days added at the end of the year. Although this calendar did not account for leap years, causing it to drift slowly relative to the solar year, it was remarkably accurate for administrative and religious planning. The stability of the 365-day cycle enabled consistent tax collection, agricultural planning, and festival scheduling. Egyptians also used a lunar calendar for religious rituals, synchronized periodically with the solar calendar. Astronomy influenced temple alignment on a massive scale. Many temples were deliberately oriented toward solar or stellar events. For example, the Temple of Amun at Karnak is aligned so that the rising sun during the winter solstice illuminates its inner sanctuary. The Abu Simbel temples, constructed by Ramesses II, were aligned so precisely that twice a year the rising sun shines deep into the temple interior to illuminate statues of gods seated within. These alignments required precise astronomical observation and architectural planning. Egyptians divided the night using a system of decans 36-star groups that rose consecutively throughout the year. Priests used water clocks, clepsydras, and Merkits astronomical sighting devices to track time at night by observing Deccan risings. The combination of star clocks and water clocks allowed Egyptians to divide both day and night into hours long before mechanical clocks existed. Their ability to measure time so precisely influenced religious ceremonies, medical timing, agricultural work, and temple rituals. The Merkhet, consisting of a sighting block and a plumb line, allowed astronomers to track the movement of stars with surprising accuracy. By lining up to Merkits separated by a fixed distance, priests could establish a perfectly straight north-south axis, essential for temple construction. This method produced accuracy rivaling or surpassing many later civilizations. The alignment of the Great Pyramid within 3 arc minutes of true north testifies to this astronomical expertise. Mathematics, astronomy, and measurement were deeply intertwined with Egyptian religious philosophy. The concept of mat, order, balance, and cosmic harmony reflected both moral and scientific ideals. Just as society required stability, so too did architecture, agriculture, and timekeeping. This belief system encouraged precision, repeatability, and structure in all technological pursuits. Scientific activities were therefore viewed as expressions of cosmic harmony, elevating their importance within society. Another crucial scientific tool was the cubit. Egypt's standardized unit of length. The royal cubit, approximately 52.3 centimeters, was subdivided into 7 palms, each palm into 4 fingers. Cubit rods, often made of wood or stone, were stored in administrative centers and used by overseers, architects, and craftsmen. The existence of such standardized measurement tools reflects a bureaucratic system that demanded accuracy and consistency. Some cubit rods include inscriptions explaining their calibration, indicating a formalized quality control system. Archaeologists have found cubit rods with little variation across centuries, proving the remarkable stability of Egyptian measurement standards. Other units measured volume, weight, area, and capacity. The Heket measured grain volume. The Deben measured weight, especially for metals, and the Setet measured land area. These units appear frequently in tax records and trade documents, demonstrating an advanced economic system supported by stable scientific measurement. Government scribes recorded harvest yields, temple offerings, construction supply inventories, and labor rations using these units. The systematic quantification of resources enabled large-scale administration that remained consistent for millennia. Calculation boards, wooden surfaces with carved slots and markers, were used to perform arithmetic visually. These tools functioned somewhat like an abacus, allowing scribes to manage large numbers efficiently. The ability to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and convert fractions with such tools made administrative tasks far easier. Combined with papyri filled with sample problems, recipes, and geometric formulas, these tools formed the foundation of an early mathematical education system. Astronomical knowledge extended into mythology and cosmology. Egyptians believed the sky was a goddess, Nut, arched over the earth, and the sun god Ra traveled through her body each night and was reborn at dawn. Although symbolic, this myth encoded precise astronomical observations, the cyclical nature of day and night, the seasonal shifts in sunlight, and the importance of renewal. The Osiris myth referenced agricultural cycles, linking the god's resurrection to the flooding and retreating of the Nile. These symbolic systems helped embed scientific knowledge within cultural tradition. Precision in scientific thought was not limited to elite astronomers or mathematicians. Craftsmen, builders, sculptors, and farmers all relied on mathematical reasoning. Weavers used proportional ratios to create complex patterns. Potters measured clay volumes. Brewers calculated fermentation cycles. and shipbuilders applied geometric knowledge to hull design. Science permeated every level of society. Egyptian scientific thought was transmitted across generations through temple schools. Known as houses of life, these centers preserved astronomical tables, mathematical problems, and measurement treatises. They also copied star charts, calendars, and geometric tables for use by priests and architects. The continuity of this institutional knowledge ensured that scientific traditions were preserved for over 2,500 years, one of the longest continuous scientific traditions in human history. By the time Greek scholars arrived in Egypt after the conquest of Alexander the Great, they encountered a civilization with a mature scientific system. Figures like Ptolemy, Hipparchus, and later Islamic astronomers drew directly from Egyptian stellar observations, calendar systems, and measurement methods. Even the concept of dividing the day into 24 hours originated largely from the Egyptian decans and water clocks, combined with Babylonian numerical divisions. Egypt's scientific legacy influenced global civilizations. The 365-day calendar, geometric principles, surveying methods, astronomical alignment techniques, and fractional mathematics contributed significantly to later developments in science, engineering, and architecture across the Mediterranean and Near East. Ancient Egypt is often remembered for its monumental architecture, spiritual culture, and scientific advancements, but its military technology was equally significant and continuously evolving. Over thousands of years, the Egyptians developed sophisticated weapons, strategic doctrines, logistical systems, fortifications, and battlefield tactics. Their military innovations were not isolated inventions. They were carefully shaped by the political, geographic, and environmental realities of the Nile Valley. Egyptian warfare was an evolving science, grounded in engineering, material experimentation, and organized state planning. Throughout the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms, Egyptian military technology underwent dramatic transformations. Early Egyptian armies relied on simple weapons such as mace heads, spears, and bows. Over time, they adopted shields, advanced composite bows, bronze swords, chariots, fortress engineering, disciplined infantry tactics, and complex command systems. The New Kingdom, in particular, saw Egypt rise to unprecedented military power, becoming one of the world's first great empires. To understand this evolution, one must begin with the early periods. In the pre-dynastic and early dynastic eras, warfare was mostly local and tribal. Battles involved small-scale conflicts over resources, territory, and political authority. Weapons from these early periods include stone maceheads, symbols of royal and military power. The Narmer palette, one of the earliest historical records, depicts the unification of Egypt and portrays the king wielding a mace. These early weapons were functional but symbolic, representing authority and legitimacy. By the Old Kingdom c. 686 to 181 BCE, Egyptian armies were organized around conscripted farmers and specialized units led by noble commanders. Weapons evolved to include copper-tipped spears, wooden shields covered with hides, and simple bows. Body armor was rare, as mobility was more important than heavy protection in Egypt's climate. However, Old Kingdom fortifications, such as those at Nubian frontier towns, show early defensive engineering. Walls built from mud brick, reinforced with wooden beams and surrounded by ditches, provided effective protection against small-scale raids. The Middle Kingdom c. 2055 to 1650 BCE marked a major transformation in Egyptian warfare. During this time, the Egyptians encountered new technologies through interactions with Asiatic groups and Nubian mercenaries. Bronze became more widespread, improving the quality of spearheads, daggers, and axes. One of the most important innovations of this era was the adoption of the composite bow, a weapon far more powerful than the simple self-bow used in earlier periods. Made from layers of wood, horn, and sinew, the composite bow had tremendous range and penetrative power. It became the signature weapon of elite archers. Middle Kingdom fortifications reached new levels of sophistication. The fortress system in Nubia, especially at sites like Buin, Semna, and Mergissa, demonstrates advanced military engineering. These fortresses included massive walls, angled battlements, archer towers, water access systems, drawbridges, and internal barracks. The fortress at Buin, for example, was one of the largest in ancient Africa, equipped with defensive bastions and ditches. Its design shows knowledge of siege, warfare, and engineering that would influence later military structures. The Second Intermediate Period, c. 1650 to 1550 BCE, introduced the most transformative military technology in Egyptian history, the war chariot. The Hyksos Asiatic rulers, who seized control of parts of northern Egypt, brought with them horse-drawn chariots, composite bows, and advanced bronze weapons. Instead of resisting these innovations, the Egyptians studied them, improved them, and incorporated them into their own military system. The Egyptian war chariot became one of the most iconic and technologically advanced vehicles of the ancient world. Light, fast, and maneuverable, it was built from carefully selected woods such as acacia and elm. Its wheels were lightweight, typically with 6 spokes for strength and reduced weight. The platform was open at the back, allowing rapid movement and quick mounting or dismounting. The entire chariot was engineered for speed and agility in desert conditions. Each chariot team typically consisted of 2 soldiers, a driver and an archer. The archer carried a composite bow, arrows stored in a quiver-attached case, a spear, and sometimes a sickle sword. Drivers had shields and controlled the horses. This combination created a mobile strike platform capable of rapid hit-and-run attacks, suppression of enemy infantry, and flanking maneuvers. Chariots were especially effective when used on flat terrain, making the Nile Valley and Levant ideal battlegrounds for them. The New Kingdom c. 1550 to 1077 BCE saw Egypt transform into a military superpower. Pharaohs like Ahmose I, Thutmose III, Seti I, and Ramesses II expanded Egyptian influence into Syria, Palestine, and Nubia. Their armies were organized, disciplined, and technologically sophisticated. Military divisions were named after gods Amun, Ra, Ta, and Sutek, and each had specialized infantry, archers, charioteers, and engineers. One of the greatest military innovations of this period was the sickle sword, known as the khopesh. This weapon combined the cutting power of an axe with the reach of a sword. Its curved blade allowed for slashing strikes capable of slicing through armor and shields. The khopesh became a symbol of royal authority and appears frequently in artwork as a divine weapon. Bronze metallurgy reached new heights during the New Kingdom. Spears, daggers, axes, arrowheads, and armor fittings were mass-produced using casting molds and standardized designs. Workshops discovered in places like Amarna show extensive military production, involving teams of metalworkers, carpenters, leather workers, and chariot builders. The state's ability to centralize weapon manufacturing reflects an advanced logistical system. Archery units became the backbone of the Egyptian army. Composite bows were powerful enough to penetrate chariot armor and had ranges exceeding 150 to 200 meters. Egyptian archers practiced regularly, and some were elite specialists trained from childhood. Tomb paintings show detailed archery techniques, including thumb release styles and bracing positions. Egyptian military medicine developed alongside battlefield tactics. Surgeons treated arrow wounds, fractures, and battlefield infections using techniques similar to those described in medical papyri. The presence of medics behind the lines shows a level of military professionalism rare in the ancient world. Egyptian battlefield tactics were strategic and organized. Chariots functioned as shock and mobility forces, archers provided ranged suppression, and infantry engaged in close combat. Communication using trumpets, flags, and messengers allowed coordination between divisions. Battle formations varied depending on terrain, enemy composition, and strategic objectives. The Battle of Megiddo, c. 1457 BCE, under Thutmose III, is one of the earliest recorded battles in history with detailed strategic descriptions. Egyptian forces marched hundreds of kilometers, navigating dangerous mountain passes to surprise their enemies. The victory demonstrated logistical planning, long-distance supply management, and disciplined troop movement. Another famous conflict, the Battle of Kadesh, c. 1274 BCE, between Ramesses II and the Hittites. reveals the full extent of Egyptian military organization. Although the battle ended in a stalemate, the surviving inscriptions describe chariot tactics, ambushes, and complex battlefield maneuvers. This event also produced the world's first known peace treaty written in both Egyptian and Hittite, showing Egypt's diplomatic sophistication. Fortification technology continued to evolve. Egyptian engineers constructed massive border fortresses in the Sinai and Nubia to control trade routes and military movements. These forts included storerooms, wells, granaries, signal towers, and defensive galleries. The ability to build such fortresses in remote regions demonstrates advanced logistics and desert construction methods. The Navy also played a critical role in Egyptian warfare. River fleets patrolled the Nile, transported troops, and supported military campaigns. Seagoing vessels reached the Levant, Cyprus, and possibly even Crete. Ship construction used mortise and tenon joints, thick hull planking, and rope lashings, all of which required precision craftsmanship. In naval battles, archers and marines formed the primary combat units, supported by ramming maneuvers when possible. Egyptian military science was not purely offensive. Defensive strategies included border surveillance, patrols, diplomatic marriages, intelligence networks, and alliances. Egypt employed spies and informants, particularly in the Levant. Letters from the Amarna archives reveal extensive diplomatic correspondence between Egypt and foreign rulers, discussing troop movements, political alliances, and regional conflicts. Military training was systematic. Young nobles learned chariot driving, archery, running, wrestling, and combat techniques. Physical training was rigorous, and military academies formed part of the state infrastructure. Common soldiers also trained regularly, practicing weapon handling, formation drills, and endurance exercises. The role of animals in warfare was significant. Horses, introduced by the Hyksos, became symbols of military power. The Egyptian state invested heavily in horse breeding, training, and chariot horse stables. War dogs and even trained baboons were sometimes used for detection or intimidation, though their combat roles were limited. Later in Egyptian history, during the late period and Ptolemaic era, new weapon technologies entered Egypt, including iron swords, heavy armor, and new forms of shields. Greek military influence introduced phalanx formations, professional mercenary units, and advanced siege engines. But even with these external additions, Egypt's own military heritage remained foundational. The long arc of Egyptian military technology demonstrates an extraordinary adaptability. From stone maceheads to chariots, from copper daggers to bronze swords, from tribal skirmishes to international empire building, Egyptian warfare evolved continuously. It integrated engineering, logistics, psychology, diplomacy, and strategic planning. Egyptian military success was not due to sheer numbers, but to the technological sophistication and organizational genius behind its armies. Agriculture was the beating heart of ancient Egyptian civilization. Without it, the pyramids, temples, cities, and the entire bureaucratic system that sustained Egypt for over 3,000 years could never have existed. Egyptian agriculture was not a simple matter of planting seeds and harvesting crops. It was a highly engineered, scientifically managed system of land organization, water control, crop planning, storage logistics, and labor distribution. The system required technological innovation, mathematical precision, and deep ecological knowledge. The result was one of the most stable agricultural economies in ancient history. The foundation of Egyptian agriculture was the Nile's annual flood, known as the inundation. Each year, from roughly July to October, the Nile overflowed its banks, depositing a thick layer of nutrient-rich silt onto the floodplain. Egyptians called this life-giving black soil kemet, contrasting it with the surrounding desert Deshret. Understanding the flood's timing, height, and movement became a matter of national survival. Early Egyptians observed the flood cycles, charted their patterns, and learned to anticipate years of abundance or scarcity based on water levels. Because of this dependence on the flood, irrigation engineering developed early. While the flood naturally watered much of the land, Egyptians built canals, dikes, embankments, and basins to control and extend irrigation. By creating a network of interconnected basins, they could trap floodwaters and release them slowly across their fields. This system, known as basin irrigation, allowed farmers to cultivate land long after the floodwaters receded. It also required maintenance. Canals had to be dredged, embankments repaired, gates adjusted, and channels monitored for silt buildup. The Egyptian state organized massive labor forces to maintain irrigation systems. This work was coordinated by local officials and overseen by scribes, who kept detailed records of labor assignments, water levels, and field boundaries. The annual clearing of canals became a ritual of civic duty. Farmers were also responsible for maintaining the small canals adjacent to their own plots. The partnership between local communities and the state was essential for keeping irrigation functional year after year. The most important technological advancement in Egyptian irrigation during later periods was the shadf, a counterbalanced water lifting device introduced around 1500 BCE. The shadf consisted of a long wooden beam pivoting on a vertical post, with a bucket on one end and a counterweight on the other. A single operator could raise water from a canal or river and pour it into irrigation channels with minimal effort. This device greatly expanded the area that could be farmed without relying solely on natural flooding. Even more advanced was the sakia, introduced during the late period and Ptolemaic era. This device used a large wooden wheel fitted with clay pots to lift water continuously. When rotated by oxen, the sakia allowed irrigation year-round and supported the cultivation of orchards, vineyards, and gardens far from the floodplain. These technologies demonstrate how Egyptian engineers continuously adapted. To overcome environmental constraints, crop cultivation was highly organized and diversified. The main cereal crops were emmer wheat and barley, used to make bread and beer dietary staples. Flax was grown extensively for linen, which had economic and cultural significance. Fruits such as dates, figs, grapes, and pomegranates enriched the diet and supported trade. Vegetables like onions, leeks, garlic, lentils, chickpeas, radishes, and lettuce were common. Egyptian art frequently depicts farmers hoeing fields, sowing seeds, harvesting grain, and threshing wheat using cattle. Asterisk tools used in agriculture were simple yet effective. Wooden plows pulled by oxen opened furrows in the soil. Sickles with flint blades harvested grain. Hoes, mattocks, and rakes were used for soil preparation. Storage technology was equally advanced. Grain was stored in silos made of mud brick, designed to keep out moisture and pests. These granaries played a crucial role during droughts, supporting population stability and preventing famine. Administrative oversight of agriculture was sophisticated. Scribes measured land using ropes and cubit rods, calculated expected yields, recorded harvests, managed taxation, and allocated grain for temple offerings, worker rations, and royal reserves. The connection between agriculture and government was so strong that taxation became one of the first mathematical applications in Egypt. Records show that each farmer's production was monitored closely. This administrative precision enabled Egypt to manage a complex national economy long before other civilizations developed similar systems. Domesticated animals played a key role in agriculture. Cattle were used for plowing, threshing, milk production, and meat. Sheep and goats provided wool, milk, and hides. Donkeys transported goods across desert routes. Poultry such as ducks, geese, and pigeons were raised for food. Fish from the Nile provided a major source of protein. The distribution of animals was carefully planned, with herds recorded and controlled by officials. Fishing technology was diverse. Nets, hooks, harpoons, and wicker traps allowed fishermen to exploit the Nile's abundant resources. Painting and artifacts show that both spearfishing and net fishing were common. Boats made from papyrus and wood made river travel efficient. The Nile was not just a water source, it was a transportation highway, a food supply, and a technological resource. Everyday domestic technologies in ancient Egypt were surprisingly advanced. Pottery production, for example, used both slow and fast wheels. Kilns reached high temperatures, allowing potters to produce durable vessels. Ceramic technology supported cooking, storage, brewing, and trade. Jars with narrow necks preserved oils and perfumes, while large amphorae transported wine and grain. Egyptian households relied on stone grinders to produce flour. Mortars and pestles processed herbs, spices, and medical ingredients. Ovens baked bread, often made in conical clay molds placed against hot coals. Brewing beer required large vats, fermentation jars, and filtering baskets. Beer was a staple of daily life and consumed by both workers and nobles. Brewing techniques were refined over centuries, showing consistency in temperature control. Yeast cultivation and fermentation times. Clothing technology centered on linen production. Flax fibers were spun using drop spindles and woven on horizontal looms. Artisans could produce extraordinarily fine linen, used for clothing, religious garments, and mummy wrappings. Dyeing techniques introduced colors such as red, blue, yellow, and green. Leather workers produced sandals, belts, quivers, and bags. Basketry, made from palm fibers, was widespread and essential for storage and transport. Interior household items demonstrate technological thought. Furniture included beds, stools, tables, and chests made using Mortise tenon joinery and wooden dowels. Artisans crafted elegant designs with inlays of ivory, ebony, and faience. Lighting came from oil lamps made of pottery or stone. Kitchen equipment included knives, ladles, sieves, and clay cooking pots. Even cosmetic technology was advanced. Egyptians produced lotions, perfumes, kohl eyeliner, and scented oils using distillation-like techniques. Food preservation was a significant domestic technology. Egyptians dried fish and meat, salted foods, and stored grains in sealed containers. Fruits were sun-dried, and wine was stored in amphorae sealed with clay stoppers. These preservation methods allowed food to be stored for months or years. Water management extended beyond agriculture. Wells and cisterns were engineered for community water supply. Wooden water pipes and ceramic channels helped distribute water in larger estates. Bathing and personal hygiene were culturally important. Soap-like substances made from animal fats and natron were used for cleaning. Natron, a key mineral used in mummification, served as a cleansing agent in daily life as well. Construction technology for homes involved mud brick architecture. Bricks were sun-dried rather than fired, allowing rapid production. Wooden beams supported roofs of reeds and plaster. Houses were often designed with courtyards for ventilation, reflecting an understanding of climate control. Wealthier homes had multiple rooms, elevated floors, and decorated walls. Transportation technology was indispensable to daily life. Boats were the primary mode of travel. Wooden ships with sails navigated the Nile's length. Ox-drawn carts moved goods on land. Donkeys were essential pack animals. Road networks, while not stone-paved like Roman roads, were maintained paths used by traders and farmers. Food production reflected both technological and cultural sophistication. Banquets, feasts, and daily meals combined agricultural abundance with culinary preparation. Recipes included stews, roasted meats, baked breads, vegetable dishes, and sweet desserts made from dates and honey. Tools such as knives, skewers, pots, and ladles supported culinary arts. The domestic sphere also required textile technologies. Weaving was a skilled craft taught primarily to women. Linen textiles ranged from coarse work clothing to ultra-fine robes. Tailoring involved cutting, hemming, and pleating techniques. Egyptians invented decorative pleating methods that became famous during the New Kingdom. Numerous other everyday technologies enriched Egyptian life. Toys made from wood and clay entertained children. Board games such as Senet and Mahan required crafted pieces and decorated boards. Musical instruments including harps, lyres, flutes, drums, and sistrums were constructed using wood, leather, and metal. Musical performances accompanied rituals, festivals, and domestic entertainment in urban centers. Domestic architecture and technology reflected social complexity. Workmen's villages like Deir el-Medina had well-organized streets, water systems, trash pits, workshops, and storage buildings. The settlement, home to the craftsmen who built royal tombs, provides an especially detailed picture of daily technologies. Archaeological evidence shows furniture, tools, pigments, writing materials, and personal items that reveal a technologically active way of life. Egyptian domestic life was full of innovation because survival demanded it. Harsh climate, unpredictable weather, and seasonal floods required clever solutions. The result was a civilization whose technological foundations were grounded not only in monumental achievements, but also in the quiet, consistent ingenuity of its farmers, artisans, engineers, and laborers. Agriculture, irrigation engineering, and domestic tools formed the backbone of Egypt's remarkable longevity. These technologies sustained millions of people, supported economic growth, fed armies, and enabled the construction of some of the ancient world's greatest monuments. Without this strong technological foundation, Egyptian civilization could not have thrived for over 3 millennia. Ancient Egypt's capacity to build pyramids, temples, palaces, statues, jewelry, furniture, tools, ships, and ceremonial objects depended on one crucial factor: a technologically advanced industrial system. This system combined metalworking, stone carving, glassmaking, faience production, woodworking, pottery, textile manufacture, and large-scale workshop organization. Egyptian craftsmanship was not merely artistic. It was deeply scientific, rooted in material chemistry, physics, and engineering logic refined over millennia. Egyptian artisans were highly respected and often worked under state supervision in specialized workshops attached to temples, palaces, or royal tomb complexes. Their skills were transmitted through apprenticeships, and many workshops operated for generations, preserving technical knowledge with remarkable consistency. Metalworking, copper, bronze, gold, silver. Ironically, Egyptian metalworking began with copper, one of the first metals humans learned to mine and smelt. Copper tools appeared as early as the 4th millennium BCE, extracted from Sinai, the eastern desert, and Nubia. Metal workers used smelting furnaces fueled by charcoal, with foot-powered bellows delivering oxygen to reach temperatures above 1080 C. Molten copper was cast into ingots, hammered, annealed, and shaped into tools like chisels, saws, knives, needles, axes, and spearheads. By the Middle Kingdom, bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, began to appear, significantly improving weapon durability, tool sharpness, and structural strength. Bronze allowed carpenters to cut hardwoods more efficiently, and stone cutters to shape limestone with ease. Casting methods included open molds for simple shapes to part stone molds for precise standardization, lost wax casting for complex forms such as statues, and jewelry. Egyptian bronzesmiths mastered alloy ratios, heating cycles, and rapid cooling techniques. Bronze also revolutionized the mass production of tools used in pyramid construction, temple building, and everyday life. Gold working reached extraordinary levels. Egypt had abundant gold mines in Nubia and the eastern desert, and gold became a symbol of immortality associated with the gods. Egyptian goldsmiths hammered gold leaf thinner than modern paper, created intricate filigree designs, and soldered tiny gold granules onto surfaces through advanced heating control. The treasures of Tutankhamun, including his mask, solid gold coffin, jewelry, and throne, represent the peak of ancient metallic craftsmanship. Or silver, although rarer in Egypt, was used for inlays, vessels, and ceremonial objects. The scarcity of silver increased its value. In some eras, silver was more precious than gold. Ironworking developed later. During the New Kingdom, Egyptians initially used meteoric iron, called iron from the sky, which contained nickel, and was worked cold or with minimal heating due to its rarity. After 1000 BCE, smelted iron began to appear more commonly, marking the transition toward an Iron Age economy. Stone carving, granite, basalt, diorite, limestone, sandstone. Egypt's monumental achievements relied heavily on advanced stoneworking technologies. The Egyptians quarried and carved some of the hardest stones in the world: granite, basalt, and diorite, using dolerite hammerstones weighing up to 10 kilograms. Quarry marks show how workers created trenches around blocks, inserted wooden wedges, soaked them with water, and allowed expansion to split the stone along natural planes. Granite, especially from Aswan, was prized for statues, obelisks, sarcophagi, and temple columns. The unfinished obelisk at Aswan, over 1,000 tons, reveals the methods used to detach monoliths from bedrock. Workers used thousands of dolerite pound blows, leaving pockmarked surfaces still visible today. Softer stones like limestone and sandstone were shaped with copper chisels. Copper saws using quartz sand as an abrasive and stone polishing blocks. Precision was astonishing. Doorways, lintels, columns, and blocks were cut so straight that some joints are nearly invisible. Sculpture and monumental art. Egyptian sculptors created statues from single blocks of stone. With mathematical precision, the human figure was carved following strict proportional grids, ensuring consistency for gods, pharaohs, and officials. Polishing involved hours of rubbing with sandstone, emery, and fine quartz powder. Large statues were transported on sledges and erected using ramps, pulleys, levers, and coordinated manpower. Colossal statues such as the 20-meter seated Colossi of Ramesses II at Abu Simbel or the Amenhotep III Colossi of Memnon illustrate engineering genius. These statues weigh hundreds of tons yet exhibit flawless symmetry. Glassmaking and faience. Early chemical engineering. Egypt was one of the first civilizations to create glass, a milestone in material science. By around 1500 BCE, artisans in cities such as Amarna and Cantor produced glass ingots, vessels, beads, inlays, and decorative pieces. Glassmaking required knowledge of sand composition, calcium, and sodium flux heating at 1100 to 1000 to 100 Celsius, controlled cooling to prevent cracking. Blue, turquoise, red, yellow, and green glasses were produced using mineral pigments. Cobalt for deep blue, copper for turquoise, iron for green, lead antimony for yellow glass. Rods were wound around clay cores to form vessels, a technique called core forming. Even more iconic was faience, a glazed non-clay ceramic made from crushed quartz and alkalis. Faience was used for amulets, tiles, rings, figurines, and temple decorations. It had a beautiful bright turquoise color, symbolic of rebirth. Faience production required precise chemical control, making it one of the oldest synthetic materials created intentionally by human engineering. Woodworking and furniture. Despite limited forests, Egyptian woodworking was highly advanced. Imported cedar from Lebanon, ebony from Africa, and sycamore fig from Egypt were used to create furniture, chests, coffins, doors, boats, and statues. Mortise and tenon joints, wooden dowels, pegs, lashings, and adhesives allowed artisans to build strong structures without metal nails. Furniture craftsmanship reached exceptional heights. Folding stools with animal-shaped legs, inlaid beds with woven leather straps, carved chairs with ivory and ebony veneer, jewel boxes with sliding lids. Furniture found in Tutankhamun's tomb, including chests, chairs, beds, and painted caskets, reflects technical mastery comparable to modern cabinet making. Pottery and ceramics. Pottery was essential for cooking, storage, brewing, and transport. Egyptian potters used slow wheels in early periods, fast wheels. By the Middle Kingdom, high-temperature kilns, slip coatings for decoration. Specialized pottery like amphorae held wine, oils, and perfumes. Large storage jars preserved grain for years. Painted pottery depicted scenes of daily life, religion, and mythology. Textiles and clothing. Linen engineering. Egyptian linen was famous in the ancient world for its fineness. Flax cultivation, fiber extraction, spinning, and weaving were highly developed industries. Linen production involved retting flax to separate fibers, combing with wooden tools, spinning with drop spindles, weaving on large horizontal looms, bleaching under the sun, pleating using heat and pressure. Linen quality ranged from coarse work garments to ultrafine textiles, nearly transparent. Priests wore pure white linen, symbolizing ritual purity, while elites wore elaborately pleated and embroidered garments. Dyes made from madder, indigo, safflower, and mineral pigments produced bright colors: reds, yellows, blues, and greens. Jewelry technology. Precision on a microscale. Egyptian jewelers worked with gold, silver, electrum glass, faience, carnelian, lapis lazuli, turquoise, obsidian, amethyst. Techniques included filigree, cloison, inlay, granulation, soldering, stone drilling, cold hammering. Some beads, drilled with tube drills using abrasive sand, are so delicate that modern jewelers still admire their craftsmanship. Shipbuilding and maritime engineering. Ships were essential for transport, military expeditions, trade, and temple rituals. Egyptian shipbuilders used planked hulls joined by Mortise tenon joints and lashed together with ropes. Boats varied from small papyrus skiffs to massive seagoing ships over 30 meters long. The Khufu ship, reconstructed from 1,000 to 100 wooden pieces, reveals astonishing maritime engineering, including a flexible hull designed to withstand wave motion. Large-scale workshops and industrial organization. Egyptian industry was highly organized. Royal workshops produced chariot parts, weapons, jewelry, ceramics, textiles, furniture, ritual objects, sculptures. Coffins. Workshops were divided into sections for woodworking, metalworking, weaving, pottery, stone carving, glassmaking, faience, glazing. Each team had supervisors, scribes, and quality inspectors. Production systems resembled early factories. At Deir el-Medina, the workers' village responsible for carving royal tombs, evidence of tool shops, paint workshops, sculpture studios, and textile production shows a remarkable industrial micro-economy. Chemical technologies, oils, perfumes, cosmetics. Egyptians mastered early chemistry in perfume distillation, oil extraction, soap-like natron mixtures, resin processing, pigment creation. Perfumes such as kifi were made from frankincense, myrrh, honey, wine, raisins, cinnamon, and dozens of herbs, prepared in ritual laboratories. Cosmetics like kohl eyeliner had practical antibacterial benefits, showing a blend of beauty and science. The industrial legacy of Egypt. Egyptian craftsmanship influenced Greek metalworking, Roman glassmaking, Near Eastern textile production, African stoneworking, Mediterranean shipbuilding. Gegdi's industrial technology was not primitive, it was systematic, precise, and deeply scientific. The story of Egyptian technology does not end with the Old and Middle Kingdoms. In many ways, the New Kingdom c. 1550 to 1077 BCE marks the peak of Egypt's scientific, political, and industrial power. During this era, Egypt was not an isolated civilization. It interacted with the Hittites, Mitanni, Babylonians, Assyrians, Nubians, Libyans, and later the Persians, Greeks, and Romans. Through trade, diplomacy, warfare, and cultural exchange, Egypt absorbed foreign technologies while exporting its own innovations across the ancient world. The late period c. 664 to 330 BCE and the Ptolemaic era 33 to 30 BCE created a rich fusion of Egyptian science with Greek mathematical philosophy, Near Eastern metallurgy, and Mediterranean engineering. Understanding this era requires examining how Egypt adopted, improved, and transmitted technology across civilizations. New Kingdom, international power and technological synthesis. During the New Kingdom, Egypt expanded its borders through military campaigns into the Levant, Nubia, and parts of Syria. This expansion introduced Egyptians to powerful foreign technologies. Rather than resisting these innovations, they integrated them into their scientific system. The composite bow, a foreign weapon perfected by Egyptian sultan. The composite bow was introduced from Asia. Egyptian craftsmen improved its design dramatically. They learned to combine wood horn sinew glue made from animal proteins, protective leather wrappings that created a bow with superior range, penetrating power, and elasticity. Egyptian versions became longer, more durable, and more accurate than older Levantine models. Archers trained intensely, and military texts depict drills, stance instructions, and even psychological conditioning. Egyptian archery became so famous that foreign kingdoms sought Egyptian bows as tribute. Horse breeding and chariot development. Chariots originally entered Egypt through the Hyksos during the Second Intermediate Period, but the New Kingdom perfected them. Egyptian chariots were lightweight, flexible, shock-absorbent, balanced. For archery, highly maneuverable wells were reinforced with rawhide. Horses were especially bred for speed and stamina, and grooms developed advanced veterinary techniques. Chariot factories in places like Pyramuses produced standardized parts, using mass production methods, bronze and later iron. Revolution. Egypt adopted Near Eastern casting techniques for bronze tools and weapons. Later, as ironworking emerged in the Eastern Mediterranean, Egyptians began importing iron weapons before mastering their own smelting. Iron completely changed Egypt's tools. Stronger plowshares improved agriculture, harder weapons improved military strength. Durable chisels improved monumental stone work. Egypt transitioned into the Iron Age gradually, influenced by Assyria and the Levant. Diplomacy as technology exchangeth Amarna letters. Clay tablets recording diplomatic correspondence reveal a world deeply interconnected technologically. These texts describe metal shipments, horses, and chariots. Skilled craftsmen exchanged between kingdoms requests for Egyptian gold, gifts of glass, ivory, and exotic woods. Engineering knowledge exchanged between rulers. Egypt participated in a massive international supply chain, similar to modern globalization. This network accelerated technological evolution, transportation, and logistics. New kingdom perfected large-scale logistics. Egypt could mobilize thousands of workers, chariot battalions, river fleets, desert caravans, military supply depots in foreign lands. Record-keeping tablets show ration lists, cargo weights, schedules, and administrative plans, evidence of advanced logistical science. Water transport became critical. Egyptian ships reached Byblos, Ugarit, Cyprus, Canaan, Punt, likely modern Eritrea, Somalia region. These long voyages required navigational knowledge, hull engineering, and maritime weather prediction. Technological exchange with Nubia. Nubia was not simply a colony. It was a technologically active partner with its own metallurgical traditions. Egyptians adopted Nubian archery techniques, gold extraction methods, unique cattle herding practices, desert survival technologies. In return, Egyptians exported writing, administrative systems, building techniques, glassmaking, religious iconography. This two-way exchange created a hybrid scientific culture across the Nile Valley. Medicine and science. In the late period, Egyptian medicine remained a powerful influence. Greek physicians traveled to Egypt to study in temples, especially in Memphis, Heliopolis, and Thebes. During the late period, Egyptian physicians served foreign courts, including in Persia. Temples functioned as early universities. The House of Life in various cities preserved medical texts, anatomical notes, astronomical observations, and pharmacological formulas. These institutions kept Egyptian science alive even during foreign rule. The Sakia, a technological leap in irrigation intro during the late period, likely from Near Eastern origin. The Sakia water wheel changed agriculture dramatically. Operated by oxen, it lifted water continuously using rotating pottery jars. This allowed large orchards, vineyards, and fields beyond the floodplain to flourish all year. The Sakia represents the transition from seasonal farming to semi-industrial agriculture. Persian influence, administration, roads, and military organization. When Egypt came under Persian rule 525 to 400 for BCE, the empire brought new technologies. Roads built using Persian engineering, postal relay networks, new ironworking techniques, Scythe chariots, logistical practices from Mesopotamia. Egyptians adapted these systems to enhance their own state functions. The Ptolemaic era, the fusion of Greek and Egyptian science. Arrival of Alexander the Great and the establishment of the Ptolemaic dynasty created one of the most extraordinary scientific periods in human history. The Greeks admired Egyptian geometry, astronomy, medicine, and architecture. The Egyptians admired Greek rational philosophy, theoretical mathematics, and mechanical ingenuity. The fusion created the Library of Alexandria, the Museum Mausian, the world's first research institution, a scientific elite including Euclid, Eratosthenes, Herophilus, Aristarchus, Archimedes in correspondence, and many others. Part 1. The Dawn of Egyptian Technology, Origins, Foundations, and the First Scientific Mindset. Part 2. Pyramid Engineering, Monumental Architecture, and the Technological Genius of the Old Kingdom. Part 7. Industry, Craftsmanship, Metalworking, Stone Carving, Glassmaking, Faience, Textiles, and the large-scale production technologies of Ancient Egypt. Part 8. Technological Evolution from the New Kingdom to the Late Period, Foreign Influences, Cross-civilizational Exchanges, and Egypt's role in the ancient world's scientific network. Part 9. Modern Archaeology, Scientific Research, Excavation Technologies, Digital Reconstruction, and what we continue to learn from Ancient Egypt today. Part 10. The complete technological legacy of ancient Egypt, global influence, continuity, and the eternal impact of a civilization built on science. What did Greek scholars learn from Egypt? Geometry used in Euclid's Elements, surveying techniques, calendar systems, medical papyri, astronomical records, engineering concepts, architectural proportions. The use of modular ratios in AncientEgypt provided thousands of years of recorded data, which the Greeks synthesized into formal theories. What did Egypt gain from Greek science? Theoretical mathematics, mechanical devices, automata, engineering, improved siege weapons, advanced metal tools, water-raising screw, Archimedes' screw, lighthouse engineering, Alexandria, the world's scientific capital under Ptolemaic patronage. Alexandria became the technological center of the ancient world. Eratosthenes used Egyptian land measurements to calculate the Earth's circumference with astonishing accuracy. Herophilus performed anatomical dissections, building on Egyptian embalming knowledge, and discovered the brain as the center of intelligence, the nervous system, the difference between sensory and motor nervous. Eusebius and Hieron created mechanical inventions, force pumps, water organs, steam-powered devices, automatic temple doors, programmable puppets. Early robotic steer devices represent the pinnacle of ancient mechanical engineering. The lighthouse of Alexandrian, of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This 100-meter tower represented advanced masonry, hydraulic engineering, lighthouse optics, structural design. It symbolized Egypt's technological dominance. Roman Egypt, industrial expansion. When Egypt became part of the Roman Empire 30 BCE, Rome depended on Egyptian grain, linen, papyrus, glass, and luxury goods. Under Roman rule, mining intensified, glassmaking became industrial, irrigation systems expanded. Cities were rebuilt using Roman engineering, roads and bridges appeared, harbors improved. Egyptian industrial and agricultural technologies remain the backbone of production. Egypt's final technological legacy, from writing to architecture, from medicine to mathematics, from agriculture to chemistry, Egypt created or influenced countless innovations. Egypt's contributions include one of the first scientific calendars, surveying and geometry systems, modular architectural design, large-scale stone engineering, medical diagnostic traditions, glassmaking, faience, chemistry, advanced textile production, chariot warfare and archery techniques, industrial workshop organization, hydrological engineering. Egypt was not a passive civilization, it was a technological engine that fueled scientific growth for millennia. Modern archaeology has transformed our understanding of ancient Egyptian technology. While early Egyptology relied on observation, sketching, and limited excavation techniques, today's research integrates advanced scientific tools, digital modeling, geophysical scanning, chemical analysis, and high-precision dating methods. These innovations allow us to see Egypt not as a mythical land of magicians and mysteries, but as a highly technological civilization whose achievements can be studied, measured, replicated, and scientifically explained. The shift from treasure hunting expeditions to scientific archaeology began in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Pioneers like Flinders Petrie introduced stratigraphic excavation, pottery sequencing, and quantitative recording methods that turned archaeology into a rigorous science. Petrie's attention to detail revealed that Egyptian tools, materials, and technologies evolved systematically over time. Today, with the help of modern technologies, we can analyze Egyptian craftsmanship at microscopic levels. One of the most revolutionary tools in modern Egyptology is ground-penetrating radar (GPR). This technology uses electromagnetic waves to detect underground structures without excavation. At Giza, GPR surveys have revealed undiscovered voids, corridors, and anomalies beneath the plateau. Some may be natural cavities. Others may represent man-made structures yet to be explored. At Saqqara, radar helped locate lost tombs and buried city structures. GPR allows us to map ancient sites while preserving them. Another key development is LiDAR scanning, light detection and ranging. Mounted on drones or aircraft, LiDAR can remove sand, vegetation, and debris digitally, revealing archaeological landscapes invisible to the human eye. This technique has allowed researchers to map ancient quarry routes, long-lost pyramidal complexes, and settlement areas buried beneath desert dunes. LIDAR even reconstructed trade roads connecting quarries like Hatnub to major pyramid construction sites, proving how Egyptians transported massive stone blocks. 3D photogrammetry has revolutionized artifact documentation. Thousands of photos taken from different angles are stitched together with specialized software to create millimeter-accurate 3D models. These models preserve delicate structures digitally, allow virtual restoration, and make it possible to study objects remotely. Museums around the world now use photogrammetry to digitally reunite artifacts scattered since the 19th century excavations. Digital reconstruction has become one of the most important tools for studying Egyptian technology. Virtual reality VR models allow researchers to walk through reconstructed temples, pyramids, and tombs exactly as they looked 3,000 years ago. VR reconstructions of the Great Pyramid's internal chambers help engineers understand load-bearing structures, ventilation shafts, and hidden corridors. Using computer simulations, researchers test theories about how pyramids were built, ramp angles, friction calculations, manpower needs, and block transport simulations are modeled with extraordinary precision. In recent years, the Scanpyramids project combined thermal scanning, cosmic ray muon detection, infrared imaging, and photogrammetry to analyze the Great Pyramid's internal structure. Muon tomography, similar to taking X-rays of mountains, revealed large voids inside the pyramid, including a massive previously unknown chamber above the Grand Gallery. This technological breakthrough suggests that the Great Pyramid still holds secrets and that ancient engineers created complex architectural features we have yet to fully understand. Chemical analysis has also changed our understanding of materials. Through X-ray fluorescence (XRF), neutron activation analysis, and mass spectrometry, we now know that Egyptians used sophisticated recipes for pigments, metal alloys, and faience glazes. Analytical studies show that Egyptian blue, the world's first synthetic pigment, was produced intentionally by heating silica, copper, lime, and alkali. This pigment emits infrared luminescence, allowing archaeologists to detect invisible traces of artwork in faded tombs. Faience production, once considered primitive, is now recognized as a highly controlled chemical process involving self-glazing reactions. Microstructural analysis reveals heating schedules, cooling patterns, and flux compositions used by ancient craftsmen. These studies prove that Egyptians were early masters of thermochemistry. DNA analysis has revolutionized our understanding of mummification, population migration, and disease. Genetic sequencing of mummies reveals ancestry patterns, familial relationships, and the spread of pathogens. Studies have identified ancient strains of tuberculosis, malaria, and hepatitis. Through DNA analysis, we can distinguish royal family members, confirm kinship lines, and understand how diseases shaped Egyptian society. Modern CT scans allow non-invasive mummy analysis. Through thousands of high-resolution images, researchers reconstruct skeletons, organs, dental conditions, and mummification techniques without unwrapping a single layer of linen. CT scans of Tutankhamun, for example, revealed his age, injuries, congenital deformities, and health conditions. Other mummies show evidence of surgical procedures, dental cavities, fractures, and embalming mistakes. Carbon-14 dating provides precise chronological frameworks. Radiocarbon analysis has refined the dating of early dynastic kings, pyramid construction phases, and settlement development across the Delta and Upper Egypt. Combining radiocarbon data with tree ring analysis dendrochronology allows highly accurate historical timelines. Isotope analysis expands our understanding of diet and trade. The ratio of carbon and nitrogen isotopes in human bones reveals ancient diets: bread, beer, fish, vegetables, and occasional meat. Strontium isotopes show whether individuals were local or foreign. This data helps map migration patterns, labor movements, and interregional contact. Archaeobotany and archaeozoology, using microscopes and scanning devices, uncover seeds, bones, pollen, and microscopic remains from ancient houses and tombs. These trace materials provide a detailed picture of crops, cooking methods, animal domestication, and trade networks. For example, archaeobotanical evidence shows that figs, grapes, and pomegranates were traded widely, while imported cedar wood from Lebanon was used for elite furni. Modern restoration uses lasers, ultraviolet lighting, and microabrasion tools to clean delicate wall paintings. Laser cleaning removes soot without damaging pigment layers. UV photography reveals invisible underdrawings and original paint details. These technologies restore tombs and temples to their ancient beauty with unprecedented accuracy. Biomolecular analysis even reveals the contents of ancient jars. By testing residue inside pottery, researchers identified wine infused with herbs, sacred oils, perfumes, medicinal mixtures, animal fats, bread ingredients. These discoveries reconstruct ancient Egyptian recipes and pharmacology. Archaeologists also use experimental archaeology to reproduce ancient tools, ramps, chariots, and construction methods. By recreating pyramid blocks, workers demonstrated how sledges move efficiently on wet sand. By reproducing bronze chisels, they showed where patterns identical to those found in ancient quarries. Experiments reconstructing chariots prove that Egyptian chariots were lightweight, fast, and highly maneuverable. Digital Humanities projects map Egyptian settlements using GIS, geographic information systems. GIS models help us understand population density, trade networks, agricultural productivity, and city planning. These maps reveal how Egyptians adapted settlements to environmental challenges. Archaeologists also use satellite imaging to detect buried structures across Egypt. NASA images have revealed hidden pyramids, lost towns, and forgotten temples beneath the desert sands. Hyperspectral imaging identifies soil discoloration patterns indicating ancient constructions. All these tools combine to create a clearer picture of ancient Egyptian technology. Modern research confirms that Egyptians were not primitive builders relying on brute force. They were systematic engineers who applied scientific principles. One of the most significant findings of modern archaeology is the evidence of large-scale organization. Excavations at labor villages like Deir el-Medina reveal daily life of artisans. Clay tablets show wages, tool distributions, rations, and workflow schedules. Ostraka record worker disputes, sick days, and task lists. This data paints a picture of Egypt as a well-regulated industrial society. Excavations at the Giza workers' village show bakeries, breweries, fish preparation areas, butcheries, and storage complexes capable of feeding thousands. This infrastructure required logistical planning, comparable to modern industrial military operation bases. The pyramid towns included housing districts, tool workshops, copper smelting ovens, granaries, medical stations, administrative office. These findings prove that pyramid construction was a national engineering project, not slave labor. Digital modeling of quarry roads from Wadi el-Jarf, Hatnub, and Tura show how Egyptians transported stone blocks using sophisticated logistics. Rope fragments found in some quarries demonstrate advanced rope-making techniques with consistent diameters and tensile strength. The concept of Egyptian engineering has shifted dramatically thanks to these modern technologies. We now understand Egyptians measured angles precisely using astronomical instruments. They created modular architectural plans. They standardized tools and measurements. They processed metals chemically. They applied hydraulic engineering to irrigation. They conducted complex medical procedures. They produced synthetic materials. They operated bureaucratic systems equivalent to early industrial management. Modern scientists continue to learn from Egyptian technologies. Engineers study pyramid ventilation systems for passive cooling strategies. Architects examine mud brick construction for sustainable housing models. Chemists analyze Egyptian blue for applications in infrared imaging. Medical researchers examine ancient surgical methods and herbal remedies for modern pharmaceuticals. The legacy of Egyptian science lives on not only in temples and tombs, but also in modern laboratories, museums, hospitals, and engineering schools. When examining the long arc of human civilization, few cultures demonstrate technological continuity, scientific precision, and long-term innovation on the scale of ancient Egypt. From the prehistoric settlers along the Nile to the pharaohs of the Ptolemaic period, Egypt sustained a technological tradition spanning over 3 millennia. This final section examines the complete technological legacy of Egypt, its influence on the ancient world, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and even modern science and engineering. Egypt's impact extends far beyond pyramids and mummies. It includes contributions to mathematics, medicine, architecture, industry, astronomy, art, chemistry, urban planning, administration, engineering, and scientific methodology. These technologies shaped surrounding civilizations and helped lay the foundation for global advances that followed. The Nile as a technological teacher. Egypt's technological mindset developed from its unique environment. The Nile taught Egyptians to predict annual cycles, measure water levels, control and manage irrigation, observe astronomical patterns, maintain administrative consistency, plan long-term agricultural strategies. This environmental schooling created a society deeply attuned to measurement, planning, and observation, key pillars of scientific thinking. Egyptians learned to treat nature not as an unpredictable force, but as a pattern to be analyzed and harnessed. This mindset influenced everything from pyramid geometry to medical diagnostics, writing, and knowledge preservation. The birth of organized science. One of Egypt's greatest technological achievements was writing hieroglyphic, hieratic, and later Demotic scripts. Writing allowed Egyptians to record medical knowledge, preserve astronomical observations, standardize mathematics, document administrative systems, communicate engineering instructions, store architectural plans, transmit knowledge across centuries. Egypt was one of the first civilizations to develop scientific literature, including medical papyri. Ebers, Edwin Smith, Cahoon mathematical papyri. Rind, Moscow, Berlin astronomical tables, agricultural manuals, technical instructions for mummification, administrative records. Existence of houses of life. Egypt's temple-based educational centers created an early academic and research network. Architecture and engineering, perfection across millennia. Egyptian monumental architecture represents one of the greatest engineering traditions ever created. Key contributions include mastery of stone quarrying, precision cutting techniques, geometric planning at national scale, modular architectural design, passive cooling systems in tombs, ventilation engineering, load distribution in ceilings, corbelled chambers, and relieving systems, mass logistics, and organization. Long-term architectural maintenance. Egyptian builders developed effective methods for surveying land, aligning structures to cardinal directions, erecting monolithic statues, engineering massive temples, creating vast complexes of pyramids and tombs. Even after 4,500 years, the pyramids remain structurally stable, demonstrating extraordinary engineering logic. Medicine and anatomy. The foundations of clinical science. Egyptian medicine was both practical and empirical. Their contributions include early trauma surgery diagnosis based on symptoms, clinical prognoses, wound treatment, orthopedic methods, dental restoration attempts, pharmaceutical recipes, psychosomatic understanding, public hygiene practices, specialized medical professions. Many Egyptian remedies such as honey, garlic, castor oil, aloe, and willow bark remain pharmacologically effective today. Egyptian medical papyri represent the earliest known medical textbooks. Mathematics and measurement, the geometry of civilization. Aegean mathematics influenced the Greek world and beyond. Their mathematical achievements include fraction decomposition, surveying methods, linear algebraic reasoning, geometric principles, volume and area calculation, architectural proportions, the earliest form of pi approximation. Base 10 decimal system stools such as cubit rods, merkits, and sighting devices formed the basis of standardized engineering. Egypt's measurement culture laid foundations for later scientific standards, astronomy, and timekeeping. The systemization of the sky. Egypt produced one of the world's first functional scientific calendars, 365 days based on the heliacal rising of Sirius. Their astronomical achievements include systematic stellar observations, decan-based nighttime timekeeping, alignments of temples with solstices, celestial mapping, lunar and solar synchronization, astronomical clocks and water clocks. Higher ability to measure time influenced global calendar development. Industry and chemical technology. Egypt was a hub of ancient industry. Key industrial technologies included copper and bronze metallurgy, early ironworking, glassmaking, faience, first synthetic material, pigment chemistry, perfume distillation, soap-like natron compounds, textiles and linen technology, mass pottery production, woodworking with advanced joinery. Egyptian blue pigment is still being studied today for its infrared luminescence, military science, strategy, chariots, and metallurgy. Egyptian warfare technologies include light chariots, composite bows, khopesh swords, bronze armor fittings, siege engineering, fortresses, and military logistics. Naval fleets, elite archery academy. Esthe, Battle of Megiddo and Kadesh reveal the world's earliest documented military campaigns. Agricultural and hydrological engineering. Egypt mastered basin irrigation, canal systems, Shadf and Sakia water lifting devices, crop rotation, animal domestication, granary logistics, agricultural taxation systems. These technologies supported millions and stabilized a long-lasting society. Egypt's influence on Greece and the Mediterranean. Greek philosophers, mathematicians, and physicians traveled to Egypt to study. Egypt influenced Pythagorean geometry, Euclidean mathematics, Hippocratic medicine, Herodotean geography, Hellenistic architecture, mechanical engineering, and Alexandria philosophy and cosmology. Egyptian temple schools served as precursors to Greek academies. The Library of Alexandria. Egypt as the scientific center of the world. During the Ptolemaic period, Egypt became the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Key figures associated with Alexandria include Euclid, geometry, Eratosthenes, Earth's circumference, Herophilus, anatomy, Archimedes, mechanics, Ctesibius, hydraulics, Heron, automata. This era combined Egyptian empirical knowledge with Greek theoretical brilliance. Egypt under Rome, industrial expansion and global trade. Rome relied on Egyptian grain, linen, papyrus, glass, gold, perfumes, ships. Egypt remained a technological powerhouse, especially in agriculture and chemical manufacturing. Medieval and Renaissance influence. Egyptian knowledge survived through Arabic translations, Coptic medical literature, Greek commentaries, Roman engineering manuals. During the Renaissance, Egyptian architecture, mathematics, and art were rediscovered and admired. Egyptian obelisks still stand in Rome, Paris, London, and New York, symbols of enduring technological excellence. The modern legacy. Egypt's technology. Today, modern scientists study Egypt for insights into sustainable architecture, passive cooling systems, irrigation efficiency, ancient metallurgy, early chemistry, medical diagnostics, leadership, organization, long-term planning strategies. Digital scanning, archaeology, and reconstruction continue to reveal new technological secrets. The Great Pyramid alone still inspires architectural engineers, physicists, mathematicians, environmental scientists, archaeologists, researchers in structural mechanics. Egyptian achievements remind us that human innovation is ancient and continuous. Why Egypt's technological legacy endures. Egypt's impact endures because it was systematic, data-driven, measured, interdisciplinary, long-term, administrative, empirical, culturally supported, scientifically curious. Egypt embraced a worldview where knowledge was sacred, precision was divine, and technology was a path to immortality. Final conclusion: a civilization built on science. Egypt's technology was not accidental. It was the result of careful observation, practical experimentation, long-term memory, strong institutions, skilled artisans, sophisticated scientific culture. Egypt shaped the world not only through its monuments, but through its mind, the scientific, mathematical, and engineering spirit that still influences civilization today. The legacy of ancient Egypt is not buried in the desert. It lives in modern medicine, engineering, architecture, mathematics, chemistry, astronomy, organizational science, cultural memory. Egypt taught humanity that science, when paired with stability and imagination, can build wonders that last for eternity.